Alrighty, with me is the new Framework 13 with AMD's Ryzen 300 series, aka the new Zen 5 one. If you haven't heard of Framework, they are a somewhat new manufacturer that makes completely upgradable laptops, every single component upgradable. They have easy to follow guides online and extensive community support. Unlike other manufacturers who've promised upgradable laptops but failed to deliver, Framework has. Since they released their first laptop, they've released a ton of new components, new motherboards with better CPUs, better displays, new ports, improved aesthetics. You guys get the picture. I've reviewed every generation of Framework laptop. I have them all here. As the 2025 variant, it hasn't changed that much. I'm just going to review what's new and then tell you what I think you need to know if you're of course considering buying one. If you want more info on something that I haven't covered, I'll put a link down below to my review from last year's model. That's one of my more traditional ones. So, the Framework 13, it is much improved from the original model that came out 2 years ago. So much so that if you're a developer, it's kind of more a why you wouldn't get one versus why you should get it. Firstly, the new translucent bezel looks super cool. It reminds me of one of those old translucent Game Boys. Up till now, I felt Frameworks just looked dated and their coloured ports just looked hodgepodged. This new translucent purple bezel just ties it nicely together as a fun-looking laptop for techies. Hopefully, they can make the whole thing translucent in the future. Next, the Gen 2 keyboard is quieter. I tried the older keyboard side by side with the newer one and the key press feels identical. It has adequate travel with a little more resistance than I'd ideally like, but it's still a good enough keyboard. We did a blind test in the office and everyone agreed the new keyboard was slightly quieter. We did try recording it on the mic for you, but the difference was just too subtle to show up. Apparently, the switch to this new keyboard was to reduce resonance while the speaker volume is cranked up. We tested this, but we didn't hear any issue with it on our original Frameworks keyboard. So no surprises, we didn't hear any issue with it on our new one. The old one was somewhat loud to type on and had this slight ring to it as you typed. That's all gone on this new one. By the way, I believe this new keyboard may have been introduced when Framework released their Intel Core Ultra Series 1 motherboard last year. As a Framework with that motherboard, it seems to have this new keyboard. Talking about things that they introduced last year, they also introduced a 2.8K 120Hz display. Higher resolution than on the original Framework with a fast refresh rate panel. This panel, it gets super bright. We measured our 2024 display at over 500 nits, but this one is even brighter at 550. Perhaps they've refined the panel without actually announcing a change. Anyway, the panel's high brightness combined with the fact that it is a matte and non-reflective display makes it ideal for using in a bright environment, coding out in a coffee store, a co-working space, or at school. Plus, that high resolution makes small code just look super crisp. By the way, something we did notice when comparing the original 60Hz display to this newer one is their colours. Although both have similar colour coverage, the older one skews warmer and the newer one skews cooler. I personally prefer the colours of the older one. That being said, you may be able to just create a custom colour profile to make the newer display look like the older one. Alright, let's move on to one of the biggest improvements that I've noticed, heat you feel and fan noise. Framework laptops of old, they got pretty warm and you would hear fan noise, even for light use. This doesn't surprise me as Framework 13s, they don't have the most robust cooling solution, it's just a single fan. It was slightly improved with the Core Ultra Meteor Lake version, moving from 2 heat pipes to 1 thick one, but let's call a spade, it's still not great. Heat and fan noise, it continued to be a problem in 2024, especially with how inefficient Intel's Meteor Lake chip was. Well, I'm delighted to say that this version with the new Ryzen 7 Kraken Point chip is much improved. In real-world use, the laptop gets a tiny bit warm, but it's nothing to worry about, and it's certainly less than before. Same goes for fan noise. In a quiet room, you can sometimes hear it going, but again, it's less than before. Also, the fans are now very responsive. If you're doing something intensive like installing a program, they do spin up, but once done, they quickly spin back down. And yes, these improvements, they're noticeable on both balanced and best performance modes. Now, I thought this was due to the improved efficiency of this new Zen 5 processor, but after I ran my power efficiency test, which I will show you in a second, I saw that this new Zen 5 chip, it isn't really better in that regard. So I then thought perhaps this is due to Framework just improving the tuning of their fan curve and power profile. To test this, I updated my older AMD Zen 4 Framework from 2023 and used that for a full day. Its heat development and fan noise was also much improved. So that seems to be what's happening here. Either way, props to Framework for addressing this issue. Battery life. For very low performance tasks like watching a movie on repeat from the laptop itself, we did record a significant improvement from this year's Framework. But once you start running performance tasks on the laptop while it's unplugged, that difference does become smaller. After running Cinebench on a loop for 30 minutes while unplugged, the new Framework had a little extra juice left over the older AMD one. Please note that older AMD Zen 4 model does have a lower resolution panel to power. We would expect if they had the same panel, this gap would widen a little more in favour of this new Ryzen 350 one. Alright, so now let's switch gears and talk about what hasn't improved. Firstly, the laptop, it is not a premium feeling laptop, even though it is priced as such. You're essentially sacrificing creature comforts for the unique benefits that a Framework laptop brings. It does not feel as premium as a MacBook Air, its webcam is really rough, its speakers aren't great, take a listen. And its trackpad is also pretty mid. No haptic trackpad here. Next is its CPU. We've tested a bunch of these AMD Kraken Point processors and been very disappointed. In multi-core, this processor performs almost identically to the Zen 4U chip in my Framework 13 from 2023. It is a little faster in single core and a minuscule amount more power efficient. In our 10-minute Cinebench run, the new Zen 5 chip drew 2 watts less power, on average that is, and ran a little cooler for a similar Cinebench score. It's really minimal, folks. And you need to keep in mind, this new AMD chip comes with woeful integrated graphics that are worse than the one on the older Zen 4 version. In fact, looking at Wildlife, a benchmark that is compatible with macOS, you can see how poor this new AMD processor is when compared with the MacBook Air's one, the M4. In fact, these new Ryzen 7 chips I feel are incorrectly branded and should have been called Ryzen 6 chips. Yes, they have the same number of CPU cores as the Ryzen 7 Zen 4 chips that they replaced, but their GPU core count is significantly less. It now equals the older Ryzen 5 chips. Basically, AMD introduced a Ryzen 9 set of chips which got the integrated GPUs of the older Ryzen 7 chips. This pushed the whole stack down a bit. There are some improvements with this new GPU like increased clock frequency, but it just doesn't negate the big drop in core count. Look, last year, AMD's Ryzen 7 Zen 4 chip was kind of neck and neck with Intel's Meteor Lake Ultra 7. For example, the AMD one had better multi-core performance, but its integrated GPU was worse. This year, Intel has made a step forward with Arrow Lake H, whereas AMD has kind of been stagnant, at least when it comes to these new Ryzen 7 chips. We compared one of these to Intel's Arrow Lake H in identical Zenbooks. We found the Intel chip was better. Better single-core performance, better multi-core performance, and much better integrated graphics, all for a similar power draw. I'll link that video down below. So it's unfortunate that Framework just didn't stick with Intel here. In fact, if you want a Framework, I'd strongly suggest you save money and buy one of the older AMD models. It's still available and now comes with that newer display. Now, you could opt for the Ryzen 9 370 chip as that is more powerful and has a better integrated GPU, but I think twice about that. Not only is it expensive, but as I showed you, the Framework 13's cooling solution is not that robust. Just compare it to the Razer Blade 16's cooling solution, which houses that same CPU. This really leads me to my recommendation. If you're just looking for a good 13-inch laptop for casual use, there are sacrifices to buying a Framework. For its price, it's not as premium as other laptops that you could get, like a MacBook Air or one with an Intel Lunar Lake processor, which, by the way, both have much better battery life. That being said, there are significant upsides to buying a Framework. You know you're supporting a company that is doing the right thing, producing a laptop that is better for the environment and puts you, the consumer, first. You don't see any stupid crap here like Norton or McAfee being pre-installed that the manufacturer gets paid to include but ends up just pestering you to spend money on something you don't need. Where I feel Framework really shines is for techies like software developers. You guys are going to appreciate Framework's Linux support and are more likely to upgrade your laptop. In fact, for a software developer, it's more of a question as to why you wouldn't buy the Framework as to why you would, as I said. For me personally, having worked as a dev for over 10 years, I would prefer to code off a larger display. Even though the Framework screen is a 3:2 aspect ratio, so you do see more code going down the page, it's still only 13.5 inches. Many IDEs now, they do make good use of the left and right screen real estate. If I was considering a more expensive Framework, say $1,500 or more, I'd personally get a MacBook Pro 14. I'm happy to run macOS, and I'd appreciate the better battery life, the better creature comforts, and its much more powerful processor, especially its GPU, as I'd also use the laptop for video editing. Or I'd go for a cheaper Zephyrus G16 so I could do some coding and game in my downtime. That being said, that's my personal preference, and I can totally see buying the Framework over those laptops that I mentioned. Overall, I'm very pleased with the progress that Framework has made over the mere 2 years since they released their first laptop. Their laptops, they now just feel more mature and more complete. The only place where I feel their message just doesn't quite add up is it being cheaper to upgrade versus buy a new laptop. The motherboard in this new one is like $700, and if you upgrade, you may need different memory, potentially a faster SSD, and new Wi-Fi. I think for most people, it's going to be cheaper to sell your old Framework and just buy a new one. Plus, if you're doing that, you'll get everything else included, like the better screen and keyboard, and you won't have to buy those separately. Hopefully in the future, Framework can make it more cost-effective to upgrade versus sell and buy a new laptop, so that it delivers on their mission. Well, That's all I got for you. If you want to see my specific laptop recommendations for different types of users, then head on over to our website at bestlaptop.deals. It's quickly becoming the hub for laptop buying. You'll find our pros and cons of each laptop we've tested, alternative recommendations, a price tracker. We even call out when we feel a laptop's price makes it a great deal or a good one. If you want us to make more videos just like this one, then there is one simple thing that you can do to help out. Get subscribed if you haven't already. It's free and easy and really does make a difference in helping us grow. Plus, it makes my dearest mother very proud. Till next time, go do something awesome with your day, and I will catch you later.